The New Orleans Saints and the Houston Texans are two teams struggling to find consistency on offense. Who will come out on top this week? We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Texans and Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering the Houston Texans and the New Orleans Saints, both a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Don't forget, you can always subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate all you everydayers out there making Locked On Texans and Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. For today's episode, we're previewing this New Orleans Saints Houston Texans matchup. I got my boy John Hickman at John_Hickman12, the co-host over at Locked On Texans, along with the one, the only Cody Davis. And I am Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter. We are here to break this one down. In today's episode, this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Saints and Locked On Texans, brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, who bring you all of our crossover Thursday episodes, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Head over to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL today and use the promo code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. John, we're going to be looking at the matchups that matter most that could potentially win this game. We're going to be taking a look at what each of these teams needs to do to win. And of course, we're going to kick everything off with the biggest story for each of these teams. What's the biggest story for the Houston Texans going in? Because I think we got some offensive themes going on between both of these teams.
Yeah, man. First and foremost, it's so good to see you again, brother. But I think for the Houston Texans to jump right into it, they got to make sure that their offensive playmakers are involved. This is a team here in Houston that, I could talk all I want to about the Saints. Their defense is playing some good football right now. No doubt about it. And for Houston, what they've been able to do successfully in order to get some ball games under their dub column is they got Tank Dell involved. They got Nico Collins involved. The guys were able to get involved in the passing attack. Well, on Sunday versus the Atlanta Falcons, another NFC South mate, they weren't able to do that consistently. They cannot afford to lose this game because Nico Collins only saw 4 targets. Unacceptable. When Tank Dell went down, the rest of the offense stopped. You got to find ways to get John Mechie involved, who we love here in Houston. He's a guy that with his 7 targets, I believe he's caught in 6 of his targets. Get him involved. Dalton Schultz, all hands on deck, because this Saints defense can win at all 3 levels from what I'm seeing. They can stop the run. They're good at stopping the pass. So that's what I'm looking at. How can your playmakers here in Houston take advantage of the small margin of error that the Saints could allow on Sunday?
Yeah, that's got to be huge. I mean, we've seen that a little bit here in New Orleans as well. Like, get the ball to your playmakers and let them go out there and here you go, shocker, make plays. Who would thunk it? And I know that Tank Dell's in concussion protocol and everything like that. Do you know kind of where that is when it comes to the young playmaker?
Not as of right now. He didn't practice on Wednesday. For Houston, he has an opportunity maybe on Thursday or Friday to maybe get some burn. Christian Harris is coming back defensively, so that's good. He was out last week. But in terms of Tank Dell, I do not know where he is right now.
That's a big potential piece that will either be there or not be there for the Houston Texans. It kind of shifts the way that the New Orleans Saints could be looking at things, because what that guy can do with the ball in his hands is absolutely incredible. And I love that he stayed in Houston too. Like, what a cool storyline.
I do want to add Noah Brown did return from IR this week.
That's great.
Week 1, Noah Brown was the guy that Houston, the veteran, right? They wanted to see what he can do for this team, but he got hurt in week 1. And that kind of was a blessing in disguise for not only Tank Dell, but this Houston's offense, because of inserting Tank Dell and him getting more snaps had really opened up the playbook. And of course, that guy's a playmaker. You give him, he don't need a lot of space, but he can make plays whenever he gets the ball. So Noah Brown is returning back, and I think that will kind of help Houston out a little bit on some of the things that they want to do because of the familiarity there with Noah Brown.
Yeah, that's big. That is big. And you love Nico Collins and sort of the energy that he brings. So there's a test here. Like, a lot of these names might not be, at-home names or household names for people outside of Houston, but these are big names and a big part of why CJ Stroud and that Houston Texans offense have been so successful here throughout the season. As I look at the biggest story for the New Orleans Saints, look, they're coming off of a 34-0 shutout of the New England Patriots. And John, it feels like no one's impressed by it. And I think that's the right attitude. I really, really do, because this has been an offense in particular that struggled to find its footing, play calling issues, executing issues, spacing issues, all these different things that penalty issues, all that, which was still a bit of an issue for them, or not even a bit. It was absolutely an issue for them last week. I think it was still 12 penalties. You don't usually shut a team out when you commit 12 penalties in a game. So there's a lot of this that still needs to get cleaned up. And I think what the New Orleans Saints are kind of looking for here, and what their biggest story is going into this one, is can they replicate the performance? Doesn't mean that they need to pitch another 34-0 shutout, as nice as that would be for any Saints fan. You have to understand that that's like entirely unrealistic and unfounded in terms of like the expectation. But can they score multiple times on the offensive side? Can the defense keep points off the board? All of those things that they kind of showed, hey, they have the potential to get it done against the subpar team in the New England Patriots. Can they get it done against a much better team in the Houston Texans? That's going to be something that proves a lot to Saints fans that are waiting to see what this New Orleans Saints team can be in 2023.
When you look at the Saints offense, I mean, you guys got playmakers, Alvin, Kamara, Chris Olave, who I really do love, Ohio State guy. You're getting Michael Thomas back, who I think has looked fairly good for the amount of time that he's missed. There's playmakers on that offense, just like the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then you hear fire Matt Canada. So when I want to ask you about Pete Carmichael, the OC for New Orleans, man, is it him and the play calling that that he's going through, or is it just they have to wait to get a groove because Alvin Kamara just came back? Is it a groove thing, or is it a lack of play calling thing for New Orleans right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a great way to frame it too. Here's what I'll say. I do think that it is a little bit of a groove thing where you do have to get that down. You do have to find your rhythm, all of that stuff. But the reason that the rhythm has been so stifled now that we've watched over 22 games at this point of a Pete Carmichael called offense is that the play calling isn't necessarily there. We've seen 22 games with Pete Carmichael as the offensive coordinator. We've watched this team score over 30 points 3 times, one of which was just last week. And that was after a streak of them not topping 20 for like 10 games or something like that. So I think that, you look at 3 different quarterbacks over the course of that time. You look at a bunch of different offensive playmakers in and out of the lineup at that time, inconsistent usage of those playmakers. Hello, Taysom Hill being a big part of that. So I do think that there is a large part of it that is play calling, and there's also pieces of it that are the execution. But you can go out there and execute a play perfectly, but if that play doesn't match the situation, it's never going to match the situation. You can't match it enough. You can't execute it well enough that all of a sudden it matches the situation, right? So I do think that there's a little bit of the putting players in position to succeed, and then also the onus then on the players to go out there and succeed when put in the right positions.
Last question, man. The last time we had an opportunity to be around each other, Mobile, Alabama, we was at the Senior Bowl last year, and Trevor Penning was one of those participants in the Senior Bowl. He was a guy that I didn't think he had the best of technique. I thought he was a guy that was overly aggressive, and he was a guy that I could see at that time costing his team penalties because of his lack of awareness and just boneheaded plays. So far to this year, have you seen – because that was a part of his rookie year mistakes, but have you seen an improved and mature version of Trevor Penning throughout the first 5 games of the year?
Yeah, I do think so. But I think the interesting thing is, and John, you remember this from the Senior Bowl, everyone touted Trevor Penning as this outstanding run blocker who needed to make strides as a pass blocker. I think that we've seen the strides of the pass blocker in process. He's not a finished product by any means, and he's not going to be until probably his 3rd or 4th year in the season, where you finally get, or 3rd and 4th year in his career, just in time for the 5th year option conversation to be able to say, all right, this is kind of who Trevor Penning is going to be. But right now, what you've actually seen is a little bit of a regression as a run blocker while making the progress as a pass blocker. So I think that he's got to kind of get better at closing that gap so that he can be a little bit more all around. You've seen the Saints run a lot of their offense in terms of their rush offense to the right side, behind Ryan Ramczyk, behind Cesar Ruiz, behind the center, Eric McCoy. That's been the focus of that of the run game so far. And if you don't have the diversity directionally to go both ways, then you're going to end up in trouble eventually up against the right fronts. So great question. And I think that, like, when I look at Trevor Penning, I can see the progress, but where the regress is happening is a little bit concerning. So it's going to be interesting watching him throughout the rest of the year. And I know that for you, that's a big time matchup, right? The way that you're looking at the trenches. So that's what we're going to take a look at next, because when it comes down to these two teams, there's still a lot to talk about. So we got a lot left here. We ain't even close. We ain't even done yet. So as we look ahead here, we're going to be taking a look at the matchups that could change the game in this weekend's matchup here, starting with winning the trenches. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Texans and Locked On Saints here on this crossover Thursday on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And before we move forward, Texans and Saints fans, I want to let you guys know about PrizePicks, the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports is super simple. It's just you versus the numbers. So for Texan fans, do you believe CJ Stroud is going to pass for more than 242.5 passing yards? If so, you pick the more or you pick the less. For the Saints fans out there, do you believe that Alvin Kamara can rush for 63.5 rushing yards? If so, once again, you pick the more or less, and it's super simple. They got them on every player available right now, and this is an easier way to get in on the daily fantasy sports. And again, it's exciting. It's fun. You definitely want to get in. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOn, LOCKED NFL for a first-time deposit match up to $100.
All right, y'all, continuing on with this crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Texans and Locked On Saints. Man, John, we got a lot to look at here in terms of the potential matchups, right? Like, there's a lot of really good matchups in this one. But if you're going to we got to kind of squeeze it down to just one that could end up deciding this game. For all you everydayers out there, we appreciate you making us your first listen of the day every day. John, if you were to squeeze this down and take a look at just one matchup that could change this game, what's the matchup that you're watching?
I got to go O-line versus D-line, and I think that's for both sides of the ball. Mm-hmm. How can Houston's offensive line, who is getting some players back, Titus Howard's coming back, right? Larry Tunsil, they came back the last couple of games, and they allowed 0 pressures, 0 sacks on that left side of the ball. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I wanted to ask about Trevor Penning, because this is an opportunity for John Grenard and Will Anderson. I want to see Will Anderson get some of this one-on-one action versus Trevor Penning. I think he's a player that if he doesn't beat him because he's just doing that great off the line of scrimmage, I think he can get in Trevor Penning's hand and we can get some of those penalties and help that defense out as well as some holding calls. So I'm looking at the trenches play for Houston on both sides. I believe that how good – to go back to the offensive line, how good this Saints defense has been versus the run, it's going to be very important for you as an offensive line here in Houston to make sure that you're giving CJ Stroud the time he needs to get in rhythm, because if not, you don't want to see this rookie quarterback go out against a very good defense and get rattled to the point where he's creating turnovers because he doesn't have that time. This goes back to last week. You guys did a very good job, and I'm going to just switch hats right here real quick. As a Patriot fan, embarrassing Mac Jones in that offense, but that's because you were able to create those turnovers, get into his face, cause that pressure. So going back to what I believe can't happen here in Houston as I switch hats back, you got to make sure you give him time and give Damian Pierce or Devin Singletary, and I think Devin Singletary deserves more snaps and carries. Give them the smallest of crease to pick up some of these, first downs, right? Move the ball. Don't be so predictable running the ball, but you got to do that. And for defensively, the D-line, you guys got to get after the quarterback. No sack last week. That's unacceptable. Didn't cause any pressure to Desmond Ridder. Derek Carr isn't a guy that's going to use his legs a lot. He's a guy that you can get into his face, and once you do, then you're looking at the back half of your defense being able to create turnovers. So it all starts in the trenches for me.
Yeah, it has to. And I think that for the New Orleans Saints defense in particular, it's the same thing, right? It's the same way to where you're looking at this defense wants to force CJ Stroud into situations to where he has to pass because the run game isn't working. Make the team one dimensional and then go after the rookie quarterback. This isn't rocket science, right? Like everyone knows what the New Orleans Saints defense is going to want to do to CJ Stroud. So that the Houston Texans, who, I mean, those numbers are impressive in terms of what Laramie Tunsil and this offensive line has done so far, to keep him, there to the point where he hasn't thrown, 220 something passing attempts without an interception so far.
Pick. Got the record.
Yep. And he's like 26 away from like whatever the next one is and all that. So it's a remarkable thing what CJ Stroud is doing, who was QB1 on the board, by the way. It was not Bryce Young going into this draft. So I'm gonna this is the smallest pat on the back, But the New Orleans Saints need to go out there and play against CJ Stroud like he is QB1. And so far he has proven that he probably should have been so far with what we've seen throughout this season. If I'm looking at the matchup that I'm going to hone in on for the New Orleans Saints that I think will decide this, I think this is kind of in marriage with the same thing, that relationship between rush versus coverage. But for me, it's got to be the Saints secondary up against the Texans pass catchers, right? There's the playmakers that you mentioned, guys like Noah Brown who can create, guys like John Mechie who, it was a big guy that I know everybody's waiting to see.
Waiting for their breakout game.
Is he going to be that guy? And I think he eventually will be. He was somebody we had ranked highly on Locked On Saints as well during his draft cycle. If Tank Della's back out there, Nico Collins and the energy that he brings, Dalton Schultz and what he can do as a pass catcher. I mean, there are, and certainly what you saw them do toward the tail end of the game last week. And so I love sort of this assembly of pass catchers that Houston has because they operate under the radar. Like, these aren't guys that people talk about a lot, but they're out there making plays, and they're part of the third best passing attack in the NFL in terms of yardage right now with the rookie quarterback. And so for me, Marshawn Lattimore, Paulson Adebo, Alante Taylor, the three corners there, the safeties, Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus May coming back for this game after serving his 3-game suspension. All of those guys matching up against these pass catchers and playmakers, let's not get it twisted, against the Houston Texans over on the offensive side, have got to go out there and take away that passing game as best as they can. Because if the front, the New Orleans Saints front is forcing the run game out of the factor, then that means that the secondary has to be ready, and they've got to be able to either cover long enough for the pass rush to get home. The Saints don't have a speedy pass rush. That's not their game. They're a big, powerful, wear you out kind of pass rush. So that coverage kind of has to hold over on the back end. And if that can happen and the pass rush can get home, if the pass rush can get home, then you start seeing some of those mistakes that you just mentioned from Mac Jones in the New England Patriots. But CJ Stroud, a much more composed quarterback, and has the mobility to make things complicated. So that coverage has to be a big piece for this New Orleans Saints team.
I also would like to add, it's going to take a hell of a play calling game from Bobby Slowick. And I thought that last week there was times where he stuck to the run where ideally you want to move away from it because it wasn't successful. And he didn't necessarily do the things that we saw him do as a play caller in the games against the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Pittsburgh Steelers, where I thought he called a phenomenal game against the Steelers. Near flawless game. And I'm looking at a Saints defense where they don't allow third down conversions. I think third or fourth in the league. They are very good in the red zone. Teams are not necessarily scoring on the Saints. They're very good against the run, 3.9 yards per carry as a defense. And so how can you help out your offense? And one thing that he did against TJ Watt and them boys, man, we saw a lot of the tight ends get involved in chipping down before they ran a route. Before or doing the run and combining with the tackles. You saw him use motion a lot to get some of those opportunities for your playmakers. And so I'm looking at Bobby Slowick and I'm thinking to myself, how can you help out the offense? We've seen you do it before. We've seen 2 back-to-back 30-point games. You cannot leave out of the game on Sunday thinking to yourself, man, what happened? Why are we seeing the Atlanta Falcons game offense or the Colts at the beginning of the year offense and not the 2 games where this team dropped 30 on the other team's head?
Yeah, that's a great point. And Bobby Slowick, of course, he's a first-time play caller now, right? Yeah, so he's trying to find his way.
And he's growing.
Carmichael, yeah, of course. Oh yeah. He was the guy that I looked at and said, hey, if the Saints change play callers this offseason, go get Bobby Slowick, like attach yourself to that San Francisco 49ers Kyle Shanahan tree as quickly as possible, because he's going to go and have like 2 good seasons, and then he's immediately going to be in the head coach conversation because of how much the NFL overreacts to offensive
crazy.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts, but you got to love it. You got to love it, right? It's the league that we're in. So, but when it comes down to what these teams must do to win this game, it's all about control. Will the Houston Texans control the way that this one goes, or will it be the New Orleans Saints? That's going to be the deciding factor. We're going to break that down as we continue on and wrap up this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Texans, Locked On Saints here, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Every day. Everyone should be empowered to take care of themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jase Medical offers the Jase case. The Jase case provides 5 lifesaving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind so that you do not just sit in the corner and hope that you have the access to the medication that you desperately need in an emergency. Jase Medical makes sure that you have the medication on hand. Jase Medical is simple. They handle everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. And here's a little tidbit for you guys. Whenever you check out Jase case, get $20 off the life-saving antibiotics today from Jase Medical by using promo code Locked On at checkout at jasemedical.com. That is JASE medical.com. Use promo code Locked On to get your $20 off the life-saving antibiotics from Jase Medical.
All right, y'all, wrapping up this crossover Thursday episode, Locked On Texans, Locked On Saints. My boy John Hickman and I, Ross Jackson here, chopping it up and getting ready for this big matchup, which I love this matchup because these are 2 teams that, like, if they're good at the same time, they're close enough to be the favorites for, the AFC favorite and the NFC favorite for a lot of fans and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of Louisiana, people that are Houston Rockets fans, or Houston Astros fans, for instance, and stuff like that, because there's no baseball team here. So, like, there it is. He's showing you. It's just for the audio listeners. He's rocking the Astros hoodie for all you Astros fans out there. So you gotta love, like, the relationship that can be built between these 2 fan bases and things like that. A lot of people from New Orleans and Houston, a lot of people from Houston and New Orleans, like, there's a lot of love here. So as we break this one down, though, one of these teams has to beat the other. It can't be all good news. It can't be all roses and rainbows. So what is it that the Houston Texans need to do to beat the New Orleans Saints on Sunday?
Well, really quick, there's an old song and it goes, down here in Texas and Louisiana, it's all about that man. Rest in peace, Big Pokey. So I had to throw that in. But we got established the rhythm. We got all of that. When I want to look at the game versus the Falcons and understand how Houston has to build on this. Mm-hmm. After they went up 12-7 that lead, the Atlanta Falcons held the ball for 16 minutes compared to Houston, a minute and 45 seconds, and they completely lost the time of possession because they were not able to do what, guys? Convert on third downs. I don't care how bad of an offense you're playing. If they have the ball long enough, 9 times out of 10, they're going to score more than you will. Now, for Houston, it came down to the wire. They went on their last drive, and C.J. Stroud threw a dot to Dalton Schultz, and they went up at that point. The defense at that point was tired, and they allowed the Atlanta Falcons to get down on the field. But I think for Houston, they got to control the clock. This is a tough defense. This is a defense that can get you off the field, so you got to put the pressure on the offense by scoring points. Do I believe the Saints can go out there and just drop 30? Absolutely not. No. They haven't showed me the ability to do so.
Right.
But do I believe that the Saints defense can go out there and stop you from scoring 20? Absolutely.
Exactly.
So you put the pressure by moving the ball, moving the chains, holding the ball, winning the time of possession, putting points on the board. Field goals will not win you this game, only touchdowns. And I think that's how Houston can get the dub on Sunday.
I love that. And I think for the New Orleans Saints, like, looking at it from their perspective here about what they need to do to get a win, I think that it comes down to control, right? Just like we were talking about earlier, they need to make sure that CJ Stroud does not catch his rhythm, right? They need to keep him off of the field. They need to disrupt him when he is on the field, all of those things. And a lot of that's going to come down to getting that Houston Texans offense off the field. It was 4 of 13, I think, last week. Yeah, 4 of 13 against the Falcons when it came to third down, right? Third down conversions. The New Orleans Saints held New England last week to 1 of 14. And look, to me, in my opinion, CJ Stroud's a better quarterback than Mac Jones. The playmakers that the Houston Texans have are better than the playmakers that the New England Patriots lack, if we're being honest. And so I think that Houston overall is a better offense than New England. The edge of Bill Belichick doesn't help you on the offensive side, as we've seen year after year after year. And so I think that for New Orleans, they have to be able to replicate the performance defensively that they've shown in the first, second, and fifth games of the season, which is get the opposing offense off the field, build your rhythm while not allowing the opposing team to build their rhythm. And for a young quarterback like CJ Stroud, that's big, because if he hits a rhythm, things get comfortable. If he can't hit a rhythm, things stay uncomfortable. You might be able to take advantage of some mistakes. Doesn't necessarily mean interceptions, but an overthrow here, a sailed ball there, a miscommunication with a wide receiver there, a missed block somewhere. Everybody off rhythm is going to be what it is that will help the New Orleans Saints end up with a win here. So I think that that's got to be the biggest thing that they do. And then on the opposite side, controlling time of possession. Saints won time of possession last week. The Houston Texans lost time of possession last week by nearly 10 minutes, or over 10 minutes actually. And so I think that that becomes a piece of the formula that you want to take from, a defense that is built. Atlanta's defense is built to mimic the New Orleans Saints defense. It's Ryan Nielsen doing what he did with Dennis Allen just last year, this year. And so if the Saints can kind of replicate that success, but be the, not the greater value version of their defense and be the usual version of, the name brand version, the Keebler, if you will, then they end up being in position. Yes. Yeah, exactly. They end up being in position to be able to get that done. But that, easier said than done, of course. But I think that that's the thing that they need to do in order to cement a win on Sunday.
Is there a great value version of Old Bay or Slap Your Mama? Is there?
Oh, I don't. It's probably like the. It's just salt and
New
pepper.
Orleans.
It's just salt and pepper.
It ain't no Cajun spice in it. Yeah. Playing New Orleans. And I mean, I'm gonna say this another thing, Houston, man, because look, like we started this segment off. The franchises, the states are very connected to one another. There's nobody in Texas that doesn't have family in Louisiana, and vice versa.
That's so true.
But for you Texan fans out there, y'all don't let no 504 Black and Gold Who Dat Nation come into the NRG Stadium.
Oh, they're gonna be traveling, bro.
And out fan y'all. Don't let it happen.
That is such a good angle on this game.
Don't let it happen.
It's so close that like a lot of Saints fans are gonna make that trip.
They are. Some of them are already here. They've been here. I've heard it. I see it. Texan fans, you got a reason to go out to the stadium this year. It's not Davis Mills. It's not Pep Hamilton calling plays. It's energy out on the field. It's not David Culley. It's not Lovie Smith. It's a product worth watching. Get out to the field. Get out to the stands. Get some Trill Burger in your system. And don't let the Saints out-fan y'all on Sunday. Please represent proud.
That's such a good point. Well, I will say this. Here in New Orleans, we boil the crawfish in the seasoning. Putting the seasoning on after it's boiled doesn't make any sense.
That's crazy, right?
Let them know. Let them know. Let them know when you show up, New Orleans. All right, you got a score prediction for this one?
I'm going to say 24-23. Houston edges it out. Close game. I think it's going to be a close game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close too. The spread for this one is just minus 1.5 for the New Orleans Saints in favor of the New Orleans Saints traveling. It's just a 1.5 point spread. Over under is 42.5. I think I'm going the under on this one. And I think for me, I'm looking at I was really close to yours. I was going 21-20. I think that ends up I do think it's a slim margin, a very, very slim margin that decides this game for sure.
I think so, man. But I think it's going to be a very good game. I think we're going to. So let me say this. I'm not hoping to forward before we leave. I think CJ is going to throw his first interception or maybe get his first turnover. I'm not the type of person to look over how good a defense is. And through 5 weeks, the Saints defense is real. They got some dogs. And so Houston has some dogs, and we've seen them create turnovers. So almost did last week against the Falcons, and I think the Saints will create a turnover. They're just that good. But I think that we're going to see I think a point explosion in the second half. I think so. For Houston, I think it's going to be a close game, but a very good game.
Yeah.
Like a very good game. I'm watching this game type of good game.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is going to be one we're going to be talking about for a little bit. If y'all want more from the Houston Texans, make sure you tune in to the Friday episode over at Locked On Texans. John Hickman and Cody Davis bringing you everything you need to know from the Texans perspective ahead of this game. If you want the Saints perspective, Locked On Saints, the game plan every Friday. What do you have to do to win your game this weekend? That's what we're going to be breaking down on Locked On Texans and on Locked On Saints. For John Hickman, at John_Hickman12 on social media. I'm Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola. Locked On Texans, Locked On Saints. We thank you very much for being here and for making us your first listen of the day every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Somebody bring me some Billies.